The first time Daniel noticed the shadow, he assumed it was a trick of the light. It was late autumn, the kind of season when the sun set too early and the evenings felt longer than they should. He had just moved into a narrow apartment on the fourth floor of an old building that always smelled faintly of dust and damp wood. The place was cheap, quiet, and mostly empty, perfect for someone who worked from home and didn't like noise. On his third night there, while unpacking boxes in the living room, he turned on the lamp beside the sofa. His shadow stretched across the wall behind him, and for a moment it didn't move when he did. He blinked, shifted his arm, and the shadow caught up a second later. He laughed it off. Old wiring. Weak lighting. The lamp flickered sometimes anyway. Still, he changed the bulb the next morning. Over the next few days, he started noticing small inconsistencies. When he brushed his teeth, the shadow in the bathroom mirror seemed slightly taller than him. When he reached for a cup in the kitchen, the shadow on the cabinet lagged it behind, like it was thinking before following. It was subtle enough to ignore, and that's exactly what he did. Humans are very good at ignoring things that don't immediately threaten them. The real unease began a week later. That night, he came home past midnight. The hallway outside his apartment was dim, lit only by a single buzzing ceiling light. As he unlocked the door, he glanced down. The shadow at his feet was not aligned with the light above. It stretched sideways along the wall, thin and elongated, as if cast by a light source that did not exist. He froze. Then the hallway light flickered, and the shadow snapped back into place. Sleep became difficult after that. He started leaving lights on in every room, convincing himself that stronger lighting would eliminate odd angles and distortions. But the brighter the apartment became, the clearer the problem looked. His shadow was always there, even when it shouldn't be. One evening, during a brief power outage, the entire apartment fell into darkness. He instinctively raised his phone to turn on the flashlight. For a split second before the light activated, he saw it. A shape on the wall opposite him, moving. There was no light. There should have been no shadow. After that night, he began testing it. He stood in front of different light sources. He turned lamps on and off. He walked slowly, then suddenly stopped. Every time the same pattern emerged. His shadow always followed, just not immediately. Sometimes it was delayed by half a second, sometimes by a full second. Once he raised his hand and held it still. His shadow raised its hand a moment later. The apartment started feeling smaller. Not physically smaller, just occupied. He began avoiding the walls, preferring to stand in the center of rooms where shadows were less defined. He stopped using the bathroom mirror at night. He even covered one wall with a blanket after noticing the shadow seemed darker there, thicker, as though layered over itself. Then came the night he made a mistake. He spoke to it. He was sitting on the sofa, the lamp behind him casting his silhouette onto the opposite wall. The shadow was unusually sharp that evening, edges crisp, almost solid-looking. He stared at it for a long time, too long. Finally, in a tired voice, he muttered, "What do you want?" The shadow didn't move. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, his shadow's head tilted. He hadn't moved. The room went silent in a way that felt unnatural, as if sound itself had stepped back. His heart began to pound so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He lifted his hand. His shadow remained still. Then, a moment later, it lifted its hand too, but not to mirror him. It lifted its hand higher, higher than his own arm could physically reach. Daniel stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. The bulb shattered, plunging half the room into dim, uneven darkness. And that was when he realized something far worse. Even with the lamp broken, the shadow was still visible on the wall, clear, defined, watching. From that night on, the shadow began appearing where no light existed. On the ceiling above his bed, on the inside of his wardrobe, once faintly on the closed bathroom door while he stood in complete darkness. It never moved when he looked directly at it, only when he blinked, only when he turned away, only when he pretended not to notice. Days passed, then weeks. His sleep deteriorated. His reflection in mirrors began to feel slightly delayed, like his body and image were no longer perfectly synchronized. And the shadow, it started getting closer. Not larger, closer, as if it were slowly detaching from the surface of the walls. One night, unable to bear it anymore, he taped every light switch in the apartment to the on position and sat in the center of the living room, surrounded by light from every angle. "No shadows," he whispered. For the first time in weeks, the walls were empty. He laughed, a weak, relieved laugh, until he looked down. There was still a shadow at his feet, but it wasn't connected to him anymore. It stood a few inches away, separated. It slowly leaned forward, and for the first time, it moved without waiting for him at all. Its arm lifted, its head tilted, its posture adjusted, testing motion the way a person relearns how to use their limbs. Daniel did not move. He did not breathe, because the shadow was no longer copying him. It was studying him. The building manager later reported that Daniel had abruptly terminated his lease and moved out within the week. He left most of his furniture behind, including all the lamps, still switched on and burning when the apartment was entered. There was nothing unusual in the room. No marks on the walls. No strange devices. Just one detail noted in the maintenance report. Every light in the apartment worked perfectly. Yet in the photographs taken that day, there was a faint silhouette on the far wall of the living room. A human-shaped shadow, standing several feet away from where Daniel had been sitting, facing the center of the room, waiting